The regular season is complete. Championship week is upon us. The college football playoff is on the horizon, and we have the penultimate rankings to get to. All that and so much more coming up here as we welcome you to another edition of Believe in Big Ten. I am Rhett Lewis here with Tom Hannifan from State of Penn State Football Podcast. Obviously, a big week there for the Nittany Lions, which we'll get into here in just a little bit. I actually have an exciting show here for you today for a number of reasons. One, obviously, we're going to talk about the CFP. We're going to talk about the Big Ten championship game. But we've got a collaborative show for you because I had the chance to join my buddy Yogi Roth on his podcast, the Y Option podcast, which is available wherever you're going to get your Y Option content, and it's available here wherever you get your Believe in Big Ten content. So we kind of did a little bit of a cross promotion there, and excited to have that conversation that Yogi and I had for you guys on the Big Ten championship game. So Tom, a lot going on here as we get this episode rolling. And this episode starts with the penultimate college football playoff rankings, Tom. As we look at this thing, as it shakes out, you have your four teams from the Big Ten sitting in the top 12 here. And we'll just go, obviously, Oregon at number 1, getting set to battle Penn State in the Big Ten championship game from Indianapolis. Texas falls in at 2. Penn State, they're battling Oregon, will be at number 3 as it currently stands. Notre Dame falls in at number 4. Georgia then at 5. Ohio State doesn't fall too far, sits right there at number 6 following their loss to Michigan. Tennessee is at 7, SMU at 8. Indiana moves up a spot to number 9 in the rankings. And then Boise State ends up at 10, Alabama at 11, and it's Miami at number 12. And that part gets interesting because they get bumped out because of the conference championship situation. So it's if we just start with where it is with the Big Ten, right? Oregon at 1, they're assuming, as they have, Oregon wins the Big Ten championship game. They get the number 1 seed. Penn State then falls to the 5 seed, right? And they would then host Arizona State in the first round of the playoff. Arizona State would be into the field because of their win, let's call it, in the Big Ten championship game, right? And again, we're forecasting all that at this point. For Ohio State, they would be 6 seed or 6. They are ranked 6th, but their seeding is 8th, right? And so then they would host Tennessee. They would be the last team to host, the lowest ranked team to host a playoff game, host Tennessee. And so that one would be pretty interesting there as well. Indiana then falls a spot from ranking to seeding, again, because of how everything's, nets out there. And then they would be the 10 seed traveling to Athens, Georgia to take on the Georgia Bulldogs, who would fall to the 7 seed based on how all the conference championship things work out. So the teams that get the bye would be Oregon. It would be Texas winning the SEC, SMU winning the ACC, and Boise State winning the Mountain West as the 4 highest ranked conference champions. The next highest ranked conference champion, of course, would be the Big 12 champion, and that would be, at this point, Arizona State. So they're in at number 12. Let's just initial thoughts there from a Big Ten perspective, Tom. As you kind of expected, how did you see it all play out?
Yeah, it's about as I expect. Even as a Penn State homer, I think Oregon will probably walk away with the win in Indianapolis this weekend. So, and we can get into more of that later. But just looking at the way this plays out, this is the committee basically saying, Ohio State, Tennessee is going to happen. So that makes a lot of sense. Indiana, is it something where basically if Texas loses to Georgia, do you just swap out Texas and Georgia in that circumstance? In which case, that's a tough matchup for Indiana. Either way you cut it. And Ohio State's in good shape. Penn State hosting Arizona State. If that holds the way it is, inviting a team from the southwest of America to frigid Happy Valley in December, edge to the Penn State Nittany Lions, I think, in that case. And I think there's just more talent on that team. So I think overall, this is really good representation for the Big Ten. The outliers, and you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started the show, is like, what happens with Boise State if they don't win? What happens with SMU if they don't win? And I think it matters the manner in which you lose this game, as it has in all games. I've said that about a lot of the games that we've talked about through the Big Ten schedule, is that your ranking matters based on how you compete in these games. So those are the two that jump out to me as like, those could be movable.
Yeah, and I was following some of Ward Manuel's comments, as these came out and as he addressed, the rankings, and it sounds like for those teams that are not playing in the Big Ten championship game or in any conference championship game, rather, their resumes and the books on them are closed, right? The evaluations are done. So what does that mean then if SMU loses? Could Indiana move up a spot into, up a spot in the rankings, and does SMU fall? Like, that's where I'm still a little unclear, as to how, and that's where you comes in, with manner of losing. So it's SMU and Clemson, right? So if Clemson wins, they're in, right? As now, I think at this point they would be, let's say they win and Arizona State wins. I think Arizona State would then get one of the buys because Clemson's going to end up ranked below Arizona State. As
possible,
and so they would be one of the 4 higher ranked teams. So could Clemson go from out of the field entirely, or, could Arizona State go from, again, they're the 15, they're ranked 15. Could they go from out of the top 12 entirely to a top 4 bye? Like, that would be kind of crazy, right?
Dabo Swinney would love to swing that from his belt buckle. He was saying that much earlier on this week. Here's the thing. Aaron Taylor from CBS put it perfectly in the last few days, is that the way that Alabama got in over Miami, the reasoning from Ward Manuel was flimsy at best. Yeah. Oh, we're going off of the last 3 games that they competed in. Miami lost 2 out of 3, but you saw Alabama win 2 out of 3. It was like, okay, you beat Mercer.
Yeah,
and you lost to a bad Oklahoma team.
Average at best Oklahoma team.
So it's like your argument doesn't hold water. And the point that Aaron Taylor was making was you're getting the brand in. You're getting the eyeballs in. So for me, to the point you were just making about, which team do you want to have a bye and a home game, any of that stuff in the college football playoff? Clemson or Arizona State? Guess which one they're going to pick.
Right.
And that's the thing that drives me nuts here, Rhett, is just say that this is about ratings, eyeballs, and money. Just say that. And I think a lot more people will be like, yep, got it. But these flimsy arguments are BS.
Yeah. So Clemson is 17, Arizona State is 15, South Carolina is 14, SMU is 8. So if Clemson beats SMU, where does that put them in the final ranking? Would that earn them one of the top 4 seeds, or if Arizona State wins, then do they jump into one of the top 4 seeds? Like that to me is kind of fascinating how all that's going to work out. We obviously got to see what happens in the Big 12 championship game, right? Can't just, shoo Arizona State in there, period. But I think that'll be really interesting, and how it affects Ohio State and Indiana, I think, are really the big things there, right? Like, does that move them up, in a way, especially if SMU loses in Indiana's case? Could Indiana find themselves, perhaps with a shot at a home game? It feels unlikely at this point, but
it feels like the top 7 aren't going anywhere. They might shuffle a bit, but I feel like that's blocked off.
Yeah. Oh, I think I agree with you there. Yeah. They're all in. Right. And I mean, I would include Indiana as in for sure. And then we'll kind of see. I think Alabama's got to be in now at this point if they put them in at 11.
That was a leap there.
Yeah. I gotta, they're up 2 spots from being on the doorstep. And then look, South Carolina was making a lot of noise this week, and there they sit behind Ole Miss and Alabama. But clearly South Carolina has played better ball than both of those teams in the last couple of weeks.
Where's the respect for Illinois? This is a big time.
Oh, yes, that's right.
We're big fans of Brett Bielema.
We love you, Brett Bielema. Yeah, we do love that. But I don't know that one is really going to move too far at this point. But look, if you're Brett Bielema, you can go out there on National Signing Day as we sit here this week and say that, look, we're sitting here 21 in the rankings, should have been higher. And next year, with your help, we're going to be playing for a shot to be in the top 12. And it's been another really good year there at Illinois. It has been a National Signing Day here this week, Tom. So I think, again, another great opportunity for these 4 and even 5, as I mentioned, teams in the Big Ten to say, look at us, right? Look at us in the national conversation like this all year long in terms of the college football playoff. You paint that picture to these recruits that are signing on the dotted line today, and then you can go and really paint that picture to the players who you're going to be recruiting out of the portal on Monday, December 9th, right? Because that's the next big milestone.
I mean, with National Signing Day, the way that this is going in the Big Ten is specifically the way that Michigan is spending money and their boosters are spending money. Bryce Underwood changed a lot of things for this class, and they're attracting a lot more talent than they initially thought they were going to get. Bryce Underwood has gotten people to go to Ann Arbor. So if you're one of these 4 Big Ten teams in there, you're not safe. And this is every single year. This is every single day of every single year you have to be competing.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of looking at the 24/7 sports recruiting rankings at this point, and Ohio State was number 1 for a while. I'm not sure if that's dependent on how many guys have actually signed their letters of intent at this point or not, but 3 5-star players. Texas and Georgia looked like, at least as of now, have currently jumped Ohio State. And then the next Big Ten team is Michigan, and they're at 6. And then you got to go down to, SC is the number 3 Big Ten team in the country in terms of recruiting rankings. They're at 16. Penn State is at 18. Nebraska 19. Wisconsin 24. Maryland's had a really good class after a bad year at 25. Rutgers up to 28, which is a really good one there. And then I'm looking at UCLA at 36 after a rough year. And Indiana is at 42, Iowa at 39. And that's kind of where it sits in the top 50. The last team there would be Illinois at 47. So well represented there in the top of college football in terms of rankings for recruits, and of course for college football rankings as well.
We're going to talk Big Ten champ game, but we're not going to not talk about the season we just had, and we're not going to not talk about Indiana and defending the Rock.
Of course.
So how are you? How are you?
Well, as we sit here and assess where we're at, it is a new life experience for me to sit here and say that my alma mater is a lock for the college football playoff, which they are, Yogi. They're a lock. Like it's, I don't know where they're going to end up. A home game, maybe one more chance to defend the Rock would be awesome. Seems maybe a little unlikely at this point, but it was an awesome finish to the season. I mean, like the reports and the texts that I got from people who were at the Snow Globe game in Bloomington, Indiana, 66-0. Everyone stayed till the end to celebrate with the old Oaken Bucket. I think of 6-year seniors like Mike Kadick up front, the starting center who's been through it all at IU and earned this opportunity. And those are the guys and the people who've been around that program forever that I really, think about in these moments when the regular season has come to end and it was historic. And now we know that there's still a lot of work to be done.
There is a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
So where do you net out on Indiana and like where they might go? Are you like go to Penn State or go to Eugene if it's like the loser of the Big Ten championship game? Or do you like want to go somewhere warm and a team you don't know? Like, do you not give a damn? Like,
yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think when you look at teams that they could end up facing, and obviously we'll get the final, CFP rankings, on Sunday after everything is all settled on conference championship week. But, I think about the teams that are out there that have all had losses to teams that they probably should have beaten. And I think that gives you a pathway to victory if you're, let's say if you're Indiana and you go and you end up having to play Georgia. Like, well, I mean, shoot, Georgia Tech took them to the mat. Sure, it was a rivalry game and 8 OTs and all that nonsense, but they've let teams hang around. Notre Dame, I mean, Northern Illinois took them down. There's faults, I feel like, with every team. And so I just don't feel like there's this overwhelming juggernaut, with the exception of perhaps the team that resides in the city that you are in right now, Yogi, with the Oregon Ducks, which we'll get to here. But I feel like every team is beatable out there, and they've shown that, and they put that on their resumes. And I think sometimes we're losing sight of quote unquote bad losses when we're talking about resumes in the CFP.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you get quiet and you're like, okay, what was on the film?
Yeah.
And you look at what Indiana has done to everyone who's been on the field with them, even including to me the Ohio State game. Like, I know what the final score was, but I don't think they can't play with a team like that, even if they got matched up against Ohio State.
They need to play better for sure.
Agreed.
Right? I mean, like that's without question. Ohio State deserved to win that game, but there were moments, throughout where Indiana certainly belonged on that field. And I think that's what you kind of take stock of, and that's what you hold on to as you go into a playoff, with, blue blood programs everywhere that you're bound to line up against.
Yeah. And that's the playoff. I guess I don't feel like they're Cincinnati. And I think they're getting put in that bucket to a certain degree of because they haven't done it in so long. So, I'm sure they won't need any motivation. No. With that said, let's just rewind a little bit. Yeah. Like, what was your year like with us? Like, it deserves a little bit of afterglow love here on our season together. We did 14 weeks together in college football.
We did, man. It was a blast, and it far exceeded any expectation that I had placed upon it. I kind of went into this thing, not really knowing, never really having done sideline games before. As I mentioned, I did one back in 2010. And it was probably so bad that it took 14 years to do another one. So, and so I was very anxious. Certainly a little nervous, but in a good way, right? Not really knowing how it was going to play out, but the thing that I can say that was an overriding factor was the support and the advocation and advocacy by my two mates in the booth. Man, you and Guy went above and beyond to make me a vital piece of the broadcast. And I don't think that happens everywhere else and on every crew, and certainly not naive to that. So I truly, have a ton of gratitude for you guys, for our producer, Denny, our director, Pat, and really BTN for being, open to maybe something a little bit different, right? Down on the sideline. Cause like I said, my previous experience in game broadcasts has been as, play-by-play or as an analyst, more so on the play-by-play side. And so to do, kind of like a 50-50 sideline traditional analyst, kind of probably talking a little bit too long into other plays. So having to call a little play-by-play every now and then was appreciated. And it was a lot of fun. And I hope we gave our viewers, just a little bit of something that they can now associate with our crew in the way that we call games.
Yeah, I think it's something that we proved to be entertaining. I heard from a lot of producers throughout the season. They were like, man, I love how you guys all ride with one another. Yeah. And I think that was it's a really selfless group, man. It starts with, at the top, obviously at the Big Ten, and then all the way throughout our crew. And of course, you and Guy. I had so much fun. Like, it was just so much fun. Like Guy would say, roll out the red carpet, and I'd punch him in the ribs because I was so jacked. You would say something dope, and I'd be like, let's go, Rhett. Like, it was just one of those. It was cool.
Yeah, it's good. I had a blast, and man, yeah, I wish we were still going, but we'll get our chance to continue to rap about ball as we go forward here for sure.
Okay, so let's keep doing that. And what's cool about this episode, this is like a home and home, right? So you can listen to this on the Big Ten. You can listen to this on Y Option. I've wanted to do this with you all year. I'm glad we get to do it in the postseason. So
collab, baby. Here
we go in the collab. So before we get to the game, right, which is the Big Ten championship game, you have such a pedigree in the NFL, right? Like, I love every week I'd say, Rhett, who's getting evaluated in the NFL from every team? You would know. And the NFL, to a degree, is cutthroat. I'd say to a large degree is cutthroat. And maybe it just is cutthroat. Here we are in college football. It's signing day this week. The portal opens up next week. I just want to I'm going to reflect it on myself. I'm like, am I too sensitive to all this stuff sometimes? Because our previous episode, I went off about the portal and where I think it sits. So for you, like, with the NFL background you have, I'm kind of curious, like, when you see quarterbacks who've been 2-year starters and team captains dip after success, or when you see, coaches leave after success, like when you see that stuff that is just kind of like old hat in the NFL, like you get cut, you get traded, you resign. Daniel Jones, moving on. Like, is there something that we all can take from you on how to navigate the collegiality that we all want to lean into?
I think what happens is you build a callus, and you kind of just, for better or worse, I'm really not sure which it is you build I don't know if I want to say a tolerance, but you build, a little bit of grit on your way of thinking when it comes to that. It's like, okay, this is part of the business. Saquon Barkley is, not getting what he feels like he deserves in New York. And so he's going to go down to their bitter division rival and is going to be his best self in Philly. And kind of like, well, great for Philly. Giants probably had their opportunity. They felt like they wanted to do something different, thought they could, be a better team, a better composed team in a different way. And I think you just got to kind of, take it for what it is, and just, it's like the no crying over spilled milk. It's just like it's hard to sit here and lament things that are already happening, because you just kind of move on. Like that's kind of the way that the NFL has taught me to approach this transactional lifestyle, and that's what college football has become. And it's more and more like the NFL, and college football programs, as I'm sure you've talked about, are more and more looking like the NFL. Personnel directors here, general managers here, scouting directors here. You've got your pro personnel directors in the NFL. You've got your college scouting directors where, you've got some guys looking at, the best talent in the league right now that we can go find next year. And then you've got a different group of guys going to look at the best talent in college and try to put that forward. That's what's happening in college football. You've got essentially your pro personnel, guys who are looking at college players right now. And then you've got your high school recruiting team who's going out there and trying to find the best and brightest on that front. I just think it's so alike now. And it's going to get even more alike with revenue share happening, that I just don't know if we can be mad about it anymore. Like it's just, that's where we're at. Like this is where it's at. It's not going back. We're not getting rid of the transfer portal. We're not getting rid of the money. Are there ways we could tweak it to make it better and more palatable for everyone involved? Probably so. I don't know if I'm smart enough to figure that part out. Hopefully there are people out there that can. But I know the one thing that really needs to be changed is where we sit with the deadlines on everything and the dates. And I think everyone can kind of agree that portal opening while teams are in the playoff is just it's insanity. You wouldn't have free agency in the middle of the NFL playoffs. So there's definitely some things that can be worked out to make it better, but I just don't know what getting upset about it all really even does for anyone anymore. It's where we're at.
Yeah. We could talk about that forever. Maybe we will in the off season. My biggest issue is like, I wonder if, and it's probably true that like the best top tier quarterbacks in the NFL, when they're going to decide to re-sign or sign somewhere, they're going to have a list of demands.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah, of course.
I hear that happening in college now.
Yeah,
and that's to me, it's like the part where I'm just like, Aaron Rodgers is one thing, somebody else is another. And that's where I just rub the wrong way. And I think your counterpoint is so good.
Yeah.
But what everybody forgets is like school starts. Like I talked to a quarterback last night, and the coach he was going to just left or got fired or whatever, and he's trying to navigate where do you go, and it's like, well, school starts January 4th.
You got to figure that out.
That's the hard part on free agency.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way,
school is still a thing here, right? Despite all the money being passed around. I think the one thing about all this that I still have a hard time with is the idea of, you got to be careful with how you say it, but giving up on your teammates in a way where, things aren't going well for you in the landscape of a season, and you're going to step away from the team to preserve your individual prospects moving forward. That part for me is still a little hard to stomach.